Hello, hello.
Hello, Ala Toledo, and hello to everybody else, and welcome to another live stream from the only source of information you need to not only survive the current apocalypse, but actually enjoy it. And I'm finally back to doing what I was doing before, and I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of the Melchizedek script to get us started. That way we can maybe get a few ideas stirred up for people that don't have any questions, so they'll get one. And this is from part 3, but and I had to go through and carefully pick out something that I didn't think would give too much away. In trying to determine if the sons of the true God were indeed spirit creatures or in fact fleshly beings just like ourselves, I diligently searched the scriptures for any linguistic connection, but found none. Nowhere in the Bible are the word angel and the phrase son of God used to describe the same individual. However, as I said earlier, the phrase son of God is used to describe both Adam as a fleshly human being and Jesus when he was alive on earth as a fleshly human being. I did discover that the Greek word angelos, Strong's G, 32, which is rendered as angel in our English Bibles, means messenger. The Greek word apostolos, Strong's G, 62, also means messenger. Obviously, these two completely unrelated words cannot possibly mean the same thing, so we're going to have to look a little deeper. The two words that form the word angelos allow us to get a better understanding of a more precise definition. Angelos is made up of the Greek words ago, meaning to bring forth, and agele, meaning herd driver. The concept being that as messengers, the angels herd or drive humans. The connection between angels and shepherds should be obvious. The other word that can be translated messenger is apostolos. In this Greek, apostolos is commonly rendered as apostle in our English versions of the Bible and is formed from the two words apo and stello. Apo is similar to our word off, but is most often translated as from, of, or out of. Stello means avoid or withdraw oneself. In many passages within our English Bibles, this word is translated as sent out. At John chapter 3 and verse 16, it says that he who is sent out is not greater than he who sends him. The word that is translated as sent out at this verse is apostolos. If we consider the definitions of the words that make up apostolos, we can conclude that indeed, an apostle would be one who is sent out, whether sent out by God, sent out by Jesus, or sent out by the angels. But at Romans, we can get a deeper understanding of how the word apo, which means out of, and stello, which means withdraw oneself, can be understood in a way that Christendom does not want revealed. At Romans chapter 1 and verse 1, Paul calls himself a servant of Jesus Christ to be an apostle separated unto the gospel of God. The word that is translated as separated is aphorizo, Strong's G873. This word indeed does mean separated and is very similar to our English word separated. We can use our English word separated just as aphorizo is used here. But saying that Paul was separated to the gospel of God is just as odd in ancient Greek as it sounds to us in English. Normally, the word separated is thought of as being from something, not to something. In any case, it highlights an obvious fact that we normally just take for granted. A person that becomes a part of something may have to first separate themselves from something else. In this case, Paul tells us that he is separating himself to the good news of God. So all that we have to figure out is what he is separating himself from. We know that the gospel or good news of God is often referred to as the truth. Simple logic will lead anyone who is willing to think about it to conclude that the opposite of good news is bad news, and the opposite of truth is lies. There are many verses in the Bible about God's people separating themselves from civilization. 1 John chapter 5 and verse 19 says, "We know that we are children of God, but the whole world is under the power of the wicked one." James chapter 4 and verse 4 says, "Cultivating a friendship with civilization shows hostility towards God." 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 4 says, "The God of this world has blinded the eyes of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel," or as I said earlier, the good news. In any case, we, like Paul, must be willing to emotionally separate ourselves from Satan's empire if we want to be able to see clearly the light of the good news. As Paul said earlier, we must be separated to the gospel or good news of God. Even though it may seem that I'm going off topic, I am not. We must all be able to understand how the so-called messengers called apostles are different from the messengers called angels. There are verses that make a connection, such as the one that says, "Unbeknownst to themselves, some have entertained angels." And that's found at Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 2. Or that angels are ministering spirits, which is found at Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 14. This means that in some way, the spirits that we call angels may very well be directing God's flock, much as a shepherd would direct a flock. There are many verses that seem to indicate that this is the case. The Bible records several instances of people being possessed by demons. The verse that I just made reference to at Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 14 in our English versions of the Bible says, "Are not all angels ministering spirits sent to serve those who are in line to inherit salvation?" I have looked at this verse from every possible angle and cannot see any reason to translate this verse in this particular way. A more accurate rendering of Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 14 would not be in the form of a question, but as a warning. Not all angels are ministering servants sent out to serve those who will inherit salvation. As accurately translated, this verse makes a very strong connection between the angels of Satan being able to direct humans and the angels of God having the same ability. Colossians chapter 2 and verse 18 specifically refers to religion as angel worship. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 20 calls angel worship demon worship. For anyone listening to this information, you need to recognize the very clear connection that exists in the Bible between demon possession and religion. God's word is replete with very clear warnings against engaging in the filthy practice of religion. When Christ returns, there will be no acceptable excuse for those who willingly devote themselves to the God of religion. And that's all for this week.
Okay, hellos this week. Top spot goes to Marie's Vegetable Garden. She's first in line. Hello, Henry. So glad you're back. And she says hi to me as well. Kitchcool's next from over in England says, "Hey guys." Marshmallow says, "Hi everyone." Synoptic Problem says, "Glad you're feeling better and back in the saddle." Chester Richardson says, "You're looking good. Take care of yourself." Guess he didn't see your hair though, but okay. Suze J says, "Hey all." Chester Richardson follows up with again, "Hey everyone." Solid Gold says, "Hey Sustenance." Angel Forster says, "Hello Henry and everyone." Dan Saber, "I bet Henry could probably do a great Leon Redbone impression." Not sure who that is. Let's see. A Chain of Hills says, "Good evening, Henry and Ale." Simple Sister Living says, hi all. And T. Lynn says, "Hey all." The Lock King says, "Hey there." And then BMX Ion is joining us today. He says the script sounds good. Matt C says hello. I see Uncle Nestor's in the chat too, but he didn't actually say hi. But first question comes from Synoptic Problem. He says, I had an acupuncture treatment for my depression yesterday. Any thoughts on acupuncture specifically or ancient Chinese medicine in general? And before that, Chester Richardson chimes in. He says he used acupuncture for many things, and it's worked for him.
Yeah, well, here's the thing with that is that it's like a reference to religion, because I've been in religions. I was Catholic, and then I was Protestant, and then I was Jehovah's Witness. And it seems like no matter what you do, it's like there's always some kind of rules about what's allowed and what isn't allowed. And so you got to try to figure out where to draw the line. Like, I guess some churches, if they found out you had a pentagram painted under your bed and you were lighting black candles and marching around chanting, then that's obviously going to be over the limit. But they kind of throw in alternative healing a lot of times as something to do with the demons. So you're getting somebody getting stuck with a pin right here, and all of a sudden they can walk, and that doesn't seem reasonable. That's like magic. But honestly, if you go to the VA and you get X-rayed and MRI'd, that's pretty doggone close to black magic too. And I've got a friend that is an acupuncturist. He's one of my subscribers. And I've talked to him about it, and he says, I follow all the instructions in my training, and it still surprises me how many people get benefits from this treatment. So, I would never ever give anybody medical advice, because what works for one person don't work for another. I was talking to a guy today about, the damage that cigarettes does to your lung, and how we instinctively know to breathe clean air. So it just goes against common sense to smoke cigarettes. But the reality is there are guys that are in nursing homes, and they go there and they interview him, and, sir, what is your secret to living to 113 years old? And his secret is you smoke 5 packs of cigarettes a day. So in my own personal experience, that's a bad idea, but everybody's different, and how you react to stuff, it's not there's nothing religious about what form of treatment you get, because we're all in a dying state, and that's scary, and we all feel sick, and we all are sore. And if there was a guy that would give me acupuncture treatments for free, and he said he could cure me, I'd say, well, I'd set some rules like, okay, how long is this going to take? It'll take a week. Okay, you get 1 week. At the end of the week, if I'm not cured, then I'll stop getting acupuncture. Is it into the?
I guess that means you've never gotten it, though.
No, is our hour up?
No. So a couple more hellos. I'm not sure if I said Matt C said hello, but he's in here. Greg Stubert says hello, and Royal Unicorn says hi. Next question comes from Uncle Nesta. He says, in Exodus chapter 34, it talks about Kirin, which can be translated, I believe, in Greek to either radiant or growing horns. I saw different pictures drawn of Moses with horns. What's up with that? I certainly do not believe Moses had horns on his head like that homosexual Michelangelo statue of him. I certainly believe his face is radiated with the glory of God, and he had to wear a veil.
Yeah, I've seen that word trick before. The Hebrew word for that Hebrew word has got alternate meanings, but it's not really alternate meanings. It's like there's a lot of words in the Bible that scholars kind of argue about, because you don't really know. If you know that a word like red, this is just an example, not a good one, but in English, red is a color, but there's also, I read a book. And so, yeah, and then that's just that's one word that we have there's a little bit difference in spelling, and I think there's a little bit difference in the spelling of horn and radiance or whatever. But we know what was going on there. We know that. In the next verse it says that he had to put something over his face to keep from blinding everybody. You know, a horn wouldn't cause that. If you got horns, you know, you're not going to burn anybody's eyes or whatever it says there. And not only that, but a scarf isn't going to, you know, isn't going to cure that. You might want to put a hat on, something like that. So, yeah, it's silly. And there are, if you go look at a picture of Moses, just type in Moses. You don't even have to put Moses with horns. If you type in Moses and you go to these old pictures, probably 1 out of 15 of them has horns. And they associate that with the bull. It was, you know, when they had the bull worship. That's like Baal. All along through the history of Israel, this bull motif keeps coming up. And, of course, that was added as part of religion. Moses went up to get the 10 Commandments, and he brought them down. They're very reasonable laws, and the people wouldn't do them. And so he had to go back up and get a ridiculous set of laws. And in that set of laws, there was all kinds of stuff about killing a bull every now and then, killing a goat every now and then. So people think that killing goats and bulls is sacred for some reason, so put horns on Moses.
Going back to the acupuncture topic, Matt Wilcox brings up that alternative medicine doctors are being assassinated, apparently, by Big Pharma.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. Well, you know, it's one of the things. I don't jump on every conspiracy theory, but weird stuff happens, and you need to know that weird stuff happens. You know, don't latch onto it and say, I know that Big Pharma is killing all the natural healers, because it may not be true. Just, you know, do like a SustenanceNCovering does. That's rather strange. What do you think about that?
Couple more hellos. Rebecca Hammond says, hi, everyone. Inject Truth says, smoke gigantic cash. Big ups, SustenanceNCovering. Douglas Aliff says, hello from Las Vegas. And Up Gardner, or UP Gardner probably, says, hi, everyone. Let's see. Next question comes from Matt C. He says, does everyone have a personal spiritual journey kind of like Buddhism or like Hinduism?
Yeah, that's what we're going through. I mean, just for an example, I see these horrible things happen. I mean, in my family or even on the interweb, and I think, you know, that's just really unfair. But it's not so much unfair. We live in this world. We subscribe to all of its, you know, well, not me necessarily, but most of us. We jump into it and think, okay, obviously I can do my part to make the world a better place, and so that's what I'm going to do. And once you start down that road, then you have to accept the payback on that is like, okay, we've taken the world from God, which is sleep, have kids, eat food, and we've turned it into this system of make everybody wear clothes, make everybody get a career, you know, only give houses to people with good credit scores. And so as long as we're kind of associating ourselves with that belief system, then if the belief system fails us, whatever that failure is, if it kills us or if it makes us really hungry or makes someone we love have a disease, then, you know, we can learn from that. I mean, that's what I learned from it. You know, I joined the military because I watched John Wayne join the military, and he saved the entire planet from evil. You know, that sounded like a good idea to me. And then I guess 2 days into boot camp, I was like, man, everybody around me is evil. Maybe them John Wayne movies were fake. And, you know, so that's part of my journey. I had to spend 6 years being abused. I mean, severely abused, because they wanted me to be evil like they were, and I wouldn't do it. And so, you know, I learned that, yes, we are not the good guys. Just because we're on this side of Satan's imaginary line does not make us special. And everybody has to learn a lesson like that.
Next question comes from A Chain of Hills. She says, my coworker said that we all give off vibrations, and they were speaking to me about the law of attraction. What's your opinion on the law of attraction and people giving off vibes and being in control of their own future? She said there is only light and that we have to have darkness to have light. And then Synoptic Problem says his wife believes in this law of attraction stuff as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't like to just say I don't know, but I mean, there's so many things that like are not necessarily in the Bible, but it doesn't mean they're not true. The Bible's just a book about a very specific subject. And so even things that you would think would be important, like, you know, does man have a soul? Or, you know, what is the condition of the dead as they await the resurrection? You know, those are things that are really important to the subject, and there really isn't much in there about that. So then as far as whether or not we have these vibes or whether there's this law of attraction, I don't know. But, you know, there's a lot of stuff that when you read in the Bible, it seems like it's leading you to what other beliefs are. Like you could find a lot of Confucianism in the Bible, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam. There are a lot of Islam in the Bible. And yet people who are Christians will fight against these other religions based on the fact that they say it isn't in the Bible, when in fact it is. But one of the examples I was thinking about was that when Jacob was stealing the birthright from his brother Esau, you know, he faked it. He put animal skins on his arm and he went to his dad, and his dad was blind. And it's like, hey, Daddy, yeah, who is it? I'm Esau. Are you sure you don't sound like Esau? No, feel my arm. Says, oh, hey, yeah, you're furry. You're my son Esau. I give you the blessing. And Esau comes back and he's mad. So Jacob took off running. And he ended up somewhere else. And I guess as life went on, he got that blessing from his father, but it was kind of treacherous the way he did it. So he comes to this angel, and he starts wrestling with the angel. Because he's like, in his mind, he's like, I don't know for sure if Daddy's blessing is as powerful. I need to get a blessing from an angel. So he's wrestling this angel. Give me a blessing. Give me a blessing. And that blessing is all the way from like the very beginning. Cain and Abel, they're sitting in front of the gate trying to get back into paradise. And they're one sacrificing animals, the other one sacrificing veggies. And it's like, give us a blessing. You know, there's always that desire to inherit the you know, the promised land or whatever goes with it. So Jacob's arguing with this angel, and he fights with him all night, and he ends up somehow defeating the angel, and the angel's like, okay, I give. You get a blessing. You have a blessing. Well, it says that he called that place Pineal because at that location, he fought an angel. Now, here's the whole point of this 10-minute story, is that there's a gland right behind your eyeballs, right behind the sockets, called a pineal gland. And a lot of people say that that's like a communication device. It's for ESP, where you can talk to other people or maybe talk to God, talk to angels. And according to the wording, it's like pineal comes, that word, pineal gland, pineal, is a little bit different spelling, comes from this fight that Jacob had with an angel where he felt he had spoken face to face with God. So, you know, I mean, there are people that are into it. If they found out that was in there, they would. I know it's in there. I don't think anybody else does. But, you know, if a pineal gland vibration person were to find that scripture, they would use that as proof positive that the pineal gland allows people to fight against angels. The reality is, it may be that is what the verse is about, but I don't know.
Well, the Chain of Hills says that she's not into that law of attraction stuff. The only thing they believe are the words of Jesus. A couple more hellos. Grandma Patty says she's late again. And Sleepy Girl 85 says, hey y'all. Next question comes from Royal Unicorn, and they want to know, are aliens real?
No, it's like this was brought up, I think, a couple of times. I did one of these live streams where I titled it Ancient Aliens, and I don't think we spent but 2 or 3 minutes talking about them. But There are creatures in the Bible that are called angels, and then they're like, once again, the Bible you would think would give us a long list of details about what angels are, but it doesn't. We just know that angels are in there. There seem to be sentient beings just like us that can enjoy all the things that we enjoy, food, sex, but they're not the same as us, or else the Bible would call them humans. It doesn't. It makes a distinction between humans and angels. And who's to say that alien? You know, we don't even know what an alien is. I think sci-fi people say it's creatures from other planets and other galaxies that have spaceships made out of metal with some kind of propulsion system. That's all. That part is just made up by people, but in the Bible there are other living beings that are smart like us, or smarter, and they're called angels. So where they are now, where they came from, what they're doing. You know, if you've actually seen visions of beings that no one else could see or something, then you may have seen an angel. Maybe you saw a ghost. Maybe you're having a hallucination. But there's a lot of people that put their faith in things they've seen as being angels. And just like I read out of that thing, you know, the Bible talks about angels, and it says, you know, that was kind of a cool thing. I don't know if anybody noticed that. That's like the big point. And if you just tuned in a little bit late, you wouldn't have seen it. But there's a verse that says, "Are not all angels ministers for those of us who are to inherit salvation?" I went back and looked at that, because I'm thinking that's not true, because in the book of Revelation it says Satan and his angels warred against Michael and his angels. So it can't be true that all angels are out to do us good. And so I went to look at it, and sure enough, it's not a question, it's a statement. It says very clearly, not all angels are out to do us good. There are angels out there to do us harm. Aliens. There are aliens out there to do us harm.
Matt C. says he thinks that aliens are real, but we don't have the senses to detect them, and that they went by a different name in ancient times. Our minds are trapped in 4D, or no, our minds are 4D trapped in a 3D body and a 2D world.
Well, it might be the pineal gland. If your pineal gland worked, you could see them. Well, you know, one of the things that Paul said, this is, okay, when Jesus was on earth, there were people that were like running through the cemetery beating up other people. And Jesus stopped them, and he's like, "Hey, you." Like, "Who, me?" "Yeah, you. What's your name?" "My name is Legion, because there's a whole bunch of us." And said, "You're not going to cast us out, are you? If you do, cast us out into them pigs. Don't make us go away." And so he did. And when he did, the guys that were in the cemetery started acting right. You know, that getting rid of those wicked angels made them act right. And so Jesus later said, you know, if you get rid of a wicked angel and you don't refill that space with a good angel, then wicked angels are going to wander around for a while and they're going to come back. So you think, you know, the churches don't teach us this, but the Bible very clearly says that wicked angels make people do stupid stuff. But Paul felt like he somehow could not figure out why he was doing the things he did. And he said, you know, I feel like we, the apostles, are the last ones to die on the stage in this great theatrical spectacle. So the apostles were last. Somebody had to be first. Somebody had to be in between. And so if you look at the Bible, there's a lot of things that happen in there that don't seem to make logical sense, and you don't even know why they're in the Bible. But apparently Paul felt like the things he was doing were being driven by some kind of an outside force. You know, he didn't say, well, I have a script, I'm in a theatrical production. He's like, I think we're being used like actors in a play. So, you know, what would do that? What would cause that? If he's doing what God wants, and these other guys are doing what God didn't want, and the demons were causing that, then probably righteous angels are what was causing Paul to do the things he did. Paul, the apostles, you know, a lot of the stuff the apostles did, if you go back and decipher it, it's like they were doing stuff they didn't even really understand. And the same thing with the tribes of Israel. If you look at that, it's following this weird pattern that just repeats over and over and over and over again in the Bible. There's no reason in the world for that pattern to keep repeating if unless something outside of those individuals was making that pattern repeat.
Okay, let's see. Next, Rebecca Hammond, going back to the pineal gland, says it's used in Kundalini. The pineal gland looks like a pineapple.
Yeah, there's like a picture of pineapple. I think somebody was telling me before that if you go to the Vatican, it's like right over the altar. Here we got all these angels, and you know, there's Moses, and there's Jesus, and there's a statue of Mary, and it's like a statue of a pineapple right there behind the altar. It's like, why would there be a pineapple there? I'm a conspiracy theorist, I promise you, but I don't latch on to everything. It's like maybe the Pope had a pineapple and he really liked it and said, whatever you do when you're building this place, make sure to include at least one pineapple. Pineal gland.
Now, I'm not sure what Uncle Nesta is saying here. He wants he's sending out Ira vibes. I'm not sure about what he means by eerie vibes.
Yeah, this
okay.
is eerie vibes.
Hey, look, he's saying something about seeds as well, and I don't know.
Look, man, I'm telling you something. Anytime you see a comment from Uncle Nesta, do not pass it up, because that's how our podcast got done today. Okay, Uncle Nesta, in case you don't know, because I think I told you once I was going to do this, but me and Ala Toledo put together a special show, or a special podcast this week. We did it this morning, so it's going to probably take a couple days to edit. Or is it? Ala Toledo, you're the editor.
No, it'll be probably maybe tomorrow or Tuesday.
Yeah, so it's coming out. Just keep your eyes open. Go to the website in a couple of days, and there'll be the newest podcast will be all about the Nicolaitans. You know, I told Uncle Nesta a couple of weeks ago that I was going to throw together a 30-minute video about the Nicolaitans, just as, you know, while people were waiting for the Melchizedek script to come out. And the more I got into it, the more involved it got, And I finally got to where it was almost done. And I told, I think I sent a copy to you, right, Ala Toledo?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he gets back with me. He goes, yeah, this sounds a whole lot like, was it Seleucid Nicator and the goddess Nike? You know, that's where the word Nicolaitan comes from. I'm like, I don't know. Let me look that up. And what is it you were saying? Well, you know, Nike her symbol was a wreath. It was a Christmas wreath. And I was like, wow. So I wanted to share, right? So I called Usamos on Skype, and I said, man, you know, I was talking to Al Toledo, and he says that the symbol for Nike is a wreath, and he's like, yeah, man, it's a wreath, and then she's got wings on her feet like Mercury, and she was the Oracle of Delphi, and that's where Paul went. And I said, well, send me your notes, because he had already started this thing about the Oracle of Delphi, and I looked up, and sure enough, you know, Paul, the apostle, visited the home of Nicolas, and then he went to where Nicolas, you know, did his thing. He actually moved and became a bishop. There's two Nicolases. But that's where we get Santa Claus from. You know, I'm like, wow, I'm unlocking all these secrets of the universe with my friends, and this talk is going to take at least 3 1-hour, you know, 3 parts, an hour each. And I think since it is about Nicator and Nicolas and Santa Claus, I'll go ahead and put it together after Melchizedek is done, and we'll just time it so that all 3 parts come out over the Christmas season, because that'll get more people to check into the channel. You know, as people do that whenever Christmas is around, they go, hey, let's find something for the kids to watch. Here's one called Saint Nick. And you never know. They might be really, really upset, but there's always a possibility that some little kid there is going to go, Daddy, this doesn't look like Santa Claus at all.
A couple more hellos. Katie Cooks and Crafts says, here I am late again. And John Casey says, me too. Going back to the pineal gland, Matt C. comments that it's a pine cone, not a pineapple. But Grandma Patty says pineapples are a sign of welcome, and John Casey says that there was an old pineapple door knocker. Yep, I'm not sure about that, but
Hey, well, let me
yeah. So
let me tell you a little story, just so we can clear up the confusion about pineapples and pine cones. You know, one of my favorite things that my mom made growing up was artichokes. She would take artichokes, and she would take ground meat and Parmesan cheese and breadcrumbs and stuff them, and then put them in a pot and cook them. And oh, that was so good. To this day, if I see artichokes on sale, I buy them, piles of them, and I bring them to my mom's house and go, Mom, I brought you a gift. And the whole thing is, I know when she cooks them, I get to go over there and eat them. But I thought, this is the best stuff in the world. Well, you know, a lot of people in this world are like picky little sissies. And I had some friends I met at the Kingdom Hall, and I wanted to really give them a treat, something that they could never, you'll never see anybody serving artichokes, stuffed artichokes at a restaurant. But here's these stuffed artichokes. I had my friends over, and anyways, he looks at that thing. He doesn't bother tasting it or anything, right? I've worked all day on these things. And he goes, man, I'm sorry, but I can't eat no dang pine cone. So it's altogether possible that that thing at the Vatican is an artichoke. I know it was a pointless story, but, you know, we got to fill time in here.
No. There is some comments. So John Casey says he sees old brass pineapple, but maybe it's an artichoke, door knockers in better neighborhoods. And I have seen pine cones as like on pillars and posts outside of rich people's houses. And I think there is a conspiracy theory that says that's some sort of sign of a ruler going back to ancient Egypt. Remember that guy that does the what is it, the Pharaoh show? He talks about pine cones in front of rich people's houses.
Right. Yeah, I hope he got out of prison. I need to get, after this is over, remind me to go check and see if he's back on his channel. There's a guy we used to watch called the Pharaoh show that would just go around taking pictures of all-seeing eyes and pentagrams and pyramids, and he said, well, he was in the South African Army, and because it was obligatory, you were drafted. So he got close to the border of Sweden, and pew, he was gone, and he was like living in he had an apartment, and then he was in a tent, and I guess somebody somewhere that knew who he was, he disappeared for a while, and they posted a video saying, yeah, he's in prison. South African, you know, actually the police broke into his house in Sweden and put him down under assault rifles and took him to jail once before. He made a video about that, and he said in the video, he says, you know, when the Swedish military arrested me, they told me that I was to stop making videos, and that if I made a video about this arrest, they would come arrest me again. And that's when he started living in the tent.
Well, with the pine or the artichokes, Grandma Patty reminisces back to the Little Rascals TV show and says, Stymie and the Little Rascals said, it might have choked Artie, but it ain't going to choke me.
Hey, I tell you what, you know, down here, I live in the South, deep South, not too far from New Orleans, and everybody I know, you talk about artichokes, they're like, oh yeah, you stuff them with shrimp. And I don't stuff mine with shrimp. You know, first off, can't afford shrimp or don't want to mess with them. But the ground meat ones are just so good. I mean, it's just, I don't know. If anybody wants, they can come over. If you can figure out where I live, just, you know, come on over. I'll fix you an artichoke.
Well, Chester Richardson says he's trying to actually grow artichokes in his greenhouses.
Yeah, you better keep it in the greenhouse. You know, there's another thing that's like artichokes, because artichokes are good for dry weather. You know, don't get them wet if you can help it. But yeah, you can grow them out like Arizona or California. You're really not far here. But there's a thing called cardoon. I don't know if you've ever heard of cardoon, but it's like a leafy vegetable, but it's in the artichoke family. And something about artichokes. I know this is not spiritual, but always when you make artichokes, you cut the stem off of the thing and you cook it and you throw the stem away. Well, I told my mom, you know, the stem smells like the rest of the artichoke. Why don't you just cook it? So she skinned it because it's got like a trunk, you know, wooden outer shell on it. But we cook the stems now, and to me, the stems taste better than any of it. They taste like that heart that's in the artichoke, and that's what cardoon tastes like. If you can grow cardoon, it tastes like artichokes, and it's a lot nicer than artichokes. And the college, maybe 50 miles north of here, had those things growing out in the yard, so they're better suited for this environment to some extent. We got some to grow, but it was so much work, took so much resources that it wasn't worth it. But that's just any advice for anybody in the deep south that wants to grow artichokes, grow cardoon.
Grandma Patty's cooking suggestion is to dip it in butter.
I've done that before. It's a lot easier than stuffing it and all. You know, some people make a hollandaise sauce and dip it in that. And I know people that have dipped them in mayonnaise. You know, me and the wife, we've just had, you know, piles of artichokes at one time because they're really cheap, and we didn't want to stuff all of them. And, you know, we just put them in a pot and boil them and then dip them in butter.
Chester Richardson says he's going to go for the cardoon. Now, going back to the pineal gland, Karen Barron says, look at pagan religions. There's always a lot of drug use for the purpose of connecting the human being to the spiritual demonic beings. Hallucinatory drugs specifically affect the pineal gland.
Does this sound familiar, Ala Toledo?
Well, isn't that what you said, or?
Yeah, well, that's what we were talking about today in the podcast. I'm really proud of the podcast we made today, and I really think if you're enjoying this, or if you like Sustenance and Covering, our typical stuff, you need to go listen to the podcast. We had a couple of other fellows with us today, and they know so much, so knowledgeable about this stuff, and one of them looked up the Oracle of Delphi because he couldn't figure out why I was trying to associate the Oracle of Delphi with Santa Claus. And he said, man, did you see the pictures of her? And I'm like, yeah, I saw them. And he goes, well, go look at them again. And I could not figure out what he was talking about. But in every single picture, the Oracle of, and these are dozens of pictures that were made of her back a long time ago. It always involves the smoke rising up out of this hole in the earth. And he said that there was one place that's where Christianity began, where Nicolas was, that had this natural thing that would happen. But around the world, they would set this woman up over a bowl, and the smoke wasn't coming out of the ground, it was coming out of the bowl. And people have said, you know, historians from the time and people who have examined you know, linguistically what they were talking about, said this woman was sitting over a bowl of burning, what did he say, ephedrine and maybe some mushrooms and then marijuana. So they were they'd have this woman in this little temple, and she would be in these fumes, and then they would ask her questions. She would respond to a man that was standing outside the door, and the man would tell whoever, you know. That's how Alexander the Great was able to resolve some issues he had. He went to Antioch, and he spoke to the man at the door of the Oracle of Delphi, and you just got to go listen to the podcast. That's a spoiler. That's what's in there, so you need to go check it out.
Just a couple random comments. So Lardner68 says he's a long way away from where you live, but he would like to meet you one day in person, but they don't like artichokes. And, laugh out loud. I don't think people in Laredo, Texas know what an artichoke is.
Might not be. Hey, you know what? They do have a place in Texas that grows artichokes. I know that because I was at there's a local food place where they just sell local food. And see, I've been growing plants all my life, and I walk in there, and this guy's got artichokes on his table. And it was supposed to be a law that you could not sell there unless it was something you grew locally. And I was like, this junk ain't from here. Where did you get it? He said, Texas. So they do grow them somewhere in Texas, but It ain't everywhere.
Grandma Patty made an interesting comment saying that alcohol is called spirits. And I think this is in reference to something you had said about, drugs and connecting things. So I guess alcohol brings us into a spiritual sense.
Yeah, I need to go back to
or
drinking.
state.
Might get through the Melchizedek script quicker. Well, it depends. Like I've seen people on alcohol, and that ain't God. It ain't the spirit of the good angels that they're echoing. Echo Pneuma Python. By the way, that's in the Oracle of Delphi script. Echo Pneuma. Echo the spirit. Pneuma is the spirit, like pneumatic, and Python is the serpent god. And that is, if you read about when Paul went to Antioch, that he didn't want to go there, but some vision appeared to him, and so he had to turn, go to Antioch, and he went straight to the Oracle of Delphi. And it doesn't say that, but it says that he went to this woman who had a spirit of prophecy. And if you look at original Greek, it doesn't say she had a spirit of prophecy. It says she echoed Pneuma Python. So she echoed the spirit of the serpent god. And that's what the Oracle of Delphi did. She was in between for Zeus. And so Zeus would enter into her, and then Zeus's words would come out. Zeus was the serpent god of the Greek Empire. Osiris was the serpent god of the Egyptian Empire. Quetzalcoatl was the serpent god of the South American Incan Aztec Empire. Oh, and like we said in a couple of hot live streams back, Amaruca was the spirit god of other indigenous peoples of the Americas, and that's where the word America comes from. We're told that Amerigo Vespucci, some guy that was a map maker, is what America was named after, but it isn't. When Columbus came here, he recognized that this was the land of the serpent god Amaruca. And so they named this Amaruca in Italian, which comes out to America.
Right Brain Prep brings up an interesting point about Dionysus discovering fermentation and alcohol as part of the jinn, or jinn as in Jinn, like the Muslims call demons and devils.
The genies.
So it is interesting, yeah. But it is interesting how the alcohol called gin sounds just like a jinn.
Right, it's like every single thing that I teach here is usually, I stumble upon it because I'm looking up Greek and Hebrew words. Because, it's like, and like we talked about, you know a little Spanish. It's like a siesta is a nap. And a siete is 7. So why would a nap and 7 be so closely related? Well, it's the same thing with Saturday. Saturday in English is Saturn Day because it's the day of Saturn. The day of rest, the day when Saturn would, in the ancient past, Saturn would cast a shadow on the earth. And it's also Sabado in Spanish, which is Shabbat in Hebrew, or Sabbath. So the number 7, the word rest, and the word for Saturn, in languages all the way around the world, end up being interchanged somehow. And we're talking about languages that are not even related. We'll have a word in their language that means 7, related to a word that means rest, related to a word that means, Sabbath, or Sabbath, rest, and Saturn, planet Saturn. So, how in the world would that happen unless there's something going on in the ancient past between Saturn and rest and 7? So like the Romans left records that Saturn ruled the sky once every 7 days.
The next question comes in from Karen Bain. Is it biblically wrong to have tattoos and piercings?
I don't like them, but I don't think it's wrong. I mean, it's just a temporary body anyway. I wouldn't have a tattoo that says I love Satan. That might be over the boundaries, but it's like, I don't know. Every day you have to make decisions, and if you make a decision, you should incorporate, how does God feel about this? And so if it was me personally, I would say, no, I'm not going to get a tattoo. But that's just personal choice. I really, if you ask me to explain why tattoos are bad, what am I going to say? You know, well, the law of Moses says not to get a tattoo. You know, what else does the Bible say about the law of Moses? Well, the law of Moses is the wicked law. So, and Jesus did away with it. So why would Jesus do away with a law against tattoos if he himself didn't like tattoos? You know, at the very least, he could say, look, I'm going to do away with the law, but we're going to keep the one about tattoos. So it's not important. I don't think it's important. But I wouldn't get one.
Grandma Patty makes an interesting note about gin. It comes from juniper berries, which comes from an evergreen.
Yeah, it's a cedar, right? Isn't that cedar trees? You can make gin out of cedar tree seeds. I think that's what it is. Somebody explained that to me once before, and there's something medicinal about cedar berries. They smell, you know, they have an odd aromatic that to me doesn't smell like gin at all. My brother loves gin, so last time it's like I rarely drink anymore. But my brother came and he liked gin, and if my brother's drinking gin, I'm gonna drink gin. Well, yeah, it's juniper berries or cedar berries. I actually planted some cedar trees once because somebody told me that cedar berries were medicinal. And I thought, well, I don't know what they do, but I can always put one in my yard.
Next question comes from Matt C. He says, somewhere in the Bible it said that King Solomon went out of the city to a high place. What is this high place?
High places are mentioned in the Bible over and over again, but you know, there's a word for mountain and a word for hill, and they're kind of the same word. So it's hard to say whether a hill is a mountain or a mountain is a hill, but there's this word high place is not the same as the word hill or mountain. And there's a lot of references in the Bible to temples and pyramids. And so if it says Solomon went to a high place, he probably wasn't on a hill. He probably went, well, you know, like when Satan was showing Jesus all the kingdoms of the world, he took him to a high place or a mountain, extremely high mountain, something like that. And then later when the apostles went with him, they went up a mountain. It's almost like when Jesus went up to a high place, it was a natural high place, and everybody else in the Bible, they go to a high place, and it's like a place of worship. Because in the Old Testament, that's where the Baals were worshipped. They would go to the high place to sacrifice their children. Solomon was a bad guy. He wasn't a good
guy. John Casey says, is going out of the city to a high place metaphorical for these people using drugs, maybe?
Could be. No, I don't think so. But, you know, there's so many. It's like when I do a script for one of my videos, I'll go into it with all these preconceived notions because I've read the Bible in English, and I've kind of associated a lot of what I read in English with you know, just trying to figure it all out. And a lot of times I'm wrong. But, you know, like the Nicolaitans, I wanted to say, oh, that's Santa Claus, that's St. Nick. But I didn't know that because I'd never done the research. And then I did the research, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it is Santa Claus. But a high place, a place where you go to get high, I don't know. I think getting high is like a recent invention. Before that, they probably had another word for it. Because, you know, it doesn't really make you higher. It just makes you kind of drunk. You know, if the Bible says that you're drunk, it'll use some kind of word associated with can't find your car keys or something like that. It's not going to be anything to do with, you know, elevation. But once again, what did we say before? That most of these rituals, religious rituals, involved the use of drugs. I mean, even today in modern times, indigenous cultures where they, you know, they're not under the law, they use drugs to alter their perception of the world around them as a means of getting spiritual. So there's no reason to believe that people that were involved in Baal worship or something like that, you know, that they wouldn't use pharmaceuticals. Carlos, you know, the man that did the podcast with us today, he did a lot of research on that, and I think he said that's how he came across my videos, is that he was doing research on the Rastafarians, and he saw my little thumbnail off to the side about Bible dreadlocks, and so he wanted to see if there was an association between pharmaceuticals and the Bible. And of course, you know, the rest is history. He's done 2 podcasts with us now.
Let's see. Next question comes from Synoptic Problem. He says, "What was the strange fire that Nadab and Abedu offered up to the Lord that got them killed by God?" Leviticus 10:1.
I think it was like Nadab and Abihu. They were the children of who was the main priest back then? It was Aaron. Wasn't it Aaron's kids? I think it was Aaron's kids. And there was like, if you look at the law code that was given to the nation of Israel, really very specific about what you could and couldn't do in the temple. And so they were the sons of Levi. They were the sons of Levi, right? I think. Yeah, Synoptic Problem probably knows. But anyway, they went ahead and did something on their own while they were drunk. You know, they weren't. And the word drunk is like the word that they use for alcohol, but not necessarily. It's possible that they went into the temple stoned out of their skulls or drunk out of their skulls. And they did something stupid. You know, they decided to see if they could get a more spiritual experience. And so God killed both of them. And I can't remember who all else was around at the time, but they were told, don't shed a tear for these people. You know, they've made this illegitimate fire. I think that's what the actual word is, like illegitimate fire. It's not really like strange fire because it's a different word. But after that, it said that no priest was allowed to drink alcohol on the days that it was his duty. That was a new rule. It was instigated because of what happened to those two. I think later on, even the father got killed. I don't know who it was. I always got to say I don't know.
Actually, Synoptic Problem does say it was Aaron, so yeah. I guess you're right.
Yes. Well, I was right with one of my guesses.
Next question comes from a chain of hills, and there's a couple people that chimed in already. She asks, how come we can't recognize wicked angels in our day? History tells us the names of some very significant wicked angels. Who are they today? Like, we know who the serpent god is in the past, but
it's possible that those people back then
there are specific characters. Yeah. So she wants to know how to recognize it. And then Karen Barron says,
here's one of the teachings of religion that's kind of a silly teaching, you know, judge not lest thou be judged. And that's in the Bible. But if you look at it, the way it's worded, and I don't think it's that far off, judge not lest thou be judged. But it's actually saying don't assign anyone a social status. And that goes both ways. We're not to look down. You are not to look down on someone because they're poor, or because they're stupid, or they don't have a good job. But at the same time, we're not to look at anybody as being important. If we're really humans, we recognize that we're humans, and the only social order that God ever put in place was that of the parents. And here we are living in the 21st century. Is this the 21st century? And we have bad parents. So you can't even follow that rule. So everybody is equal. You shouldn't look up to anybody or look down on anybody. But the churches say you're not to, if someone kills you, you shouldn't say that's wrong. And if someone's cursing, you shouldn't. The reality is the Bible's very clear that we are to judge people and to stay away from the wicked. I mean, how in the world can you not judge a wicked man but stay away from a wicked man? You have to first ascertain that he is wicked. And so, like, if you go to Galatians, they have examples of the difference between those who are fleshly beings, fleshly people that only care about themselves, and people who care about the Spirit, so that's the thing that comes up. Galatians chapter 5, and I think both examples are in chapter 5. Like the example of the people who are obsessed with the flesh is that they're competitive, they're argumentative, they think more of themselves than they think of others, they're warlike. And then you've got the people who are are filled with the fruitage of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, goodness, kindness, mildness, and control of self. So, yeah, if a person, and here's the thing, we're human beings, we should all be exactly the same. So if you have these loving, giving people that are, you know, sustenance and covering people, it's really easy to tell who isn't. You know, just start talking about the truth with somebody. You'll see their eyes glaze over if they're moderately bad, or you'll see them do this. Because people will absolutely go ballistic anytime you speak any truth with them at all. They don't want to hear any truth. You know, I'm not talking about, oh, look, the sky is blue. Yeah, that's true. But things like, well, no human government has ever filled the needs of the people. They'll get all upset about that. You know, they're like, well, wait a minute. What about the Democrats? You know, what about the Republic? What about the, you know, the founding fathers? You know, people who are associate themselves with what they think will get them the most benefits, you know, over others. You know, that's what Galatians is about. People who want to get the upper hand on everybody around them to somehow achieve more or get more money or step on the backs of those people. Those people are demon possessed, you know, very obviously. And here's the thing. The social hierarchy is designed to reward those who are wicked and punish those who are not wicked. So you just have to know that the guy that's got the most rewards is the most wicked. You know, the Pope didn't get where he is because he was a giving, loving, caring person. It's because he crushed his enemies beneath his feet. You know, the president of a country, presidents of countries, you know, if you look at them, they're not just like trash collectors that everybody likes and the next day they're running for president. These are guys that build huge, corrupt empires. You know, everybody that takes a stand against them ends up dead and no one knows how they died. You know, that's not new. You know, the Roman emperors, every time the Roman emperors had a kid, he had to worry about whether or not that kid was going to kill him when he turned 18. And a lot of them did. And it's the same thing with the British Empire. You know, the British, every time a king had an argument with one of his wives, he'd have her head cut off. You know, these people that are at the top of the social hierarchy are the most wicked, and that's because they're the most demon possessed.
Okay, last comment from tonight, and you can take us out, is coming from Fruitful Vine. They say they were reading about Melchizedek just last week. Melchizedek.
No, you did it right. Melchizedek. I mean, that's the way I say it, and that's not the way the churches say it. So they may be they may be more right than me, but you know, we all know who that is.
So Fruitful Vine says they're curious to hear what you're going to say about it. And then go ahead and take us out.
Curious. You know, everybody wants to be you, Ala Toledo. People don't know this, but every time I write another word in that script, I send it to Ala Toledo, and he tells me whether or not it's okay or not. But I'll tell you this: if you go to the website, I have posted the script for part 1, and the reason I did that is because it's interesting. It exposes some lies of the churches without giving everything away. And it's not that I have some kind of special secret I don't want to share. It's that if I start posting everything as I'm writing it, there's a lot of questions you're going to have that are not going to wait 6 months. That, you know, you may be able to get by week to week to week as you're on, you know, your tippy toes, just holding your breath, waiting to see what's coming. But I'd rather get everything written and then start posting. That way, you know, people don't go crazy with asking me questions about it. So every week, if you come here to the live stream, I'll try to read a few, you know, a chapter off of the script that I don't think gives too much away. And you may actually, even from what I just read today, you may realize that what Melchizedek is about. Oh, well, that's it for this week. I hope you all enjoyed the live stream, and we, of course, certainly want to see everybody back next week, same time, especially those of us who have been sick. We don't want to get sick again, so me and Alice Lido, you know, we want to be here. But also, I really, really cannot stress enough how important it is to go check out the podcast and the website. And also, I've posted a couple of links to the BMX Ion channel. And I don't know if I've said this before, but and I'll put links to BMX Ion's channel below me, because he's putting together some of the podcasts into videos. You know, so if you don't like listening to video or listening to people talking without pictures, he's put some stuff together. And we've decided that if anything happens to this channel, that we're going to upload all of the videos to the BMX Ion channel. So that's our emergency backup. It would be a good idea, just common sense, to go over there, mark the website, maybe subscribe to it, so that if something happens here and you want to find out about what's happening to me, you can usually go there, and you know, you can expect that as things develop, you'll be able to find out from him. But we'll see y'all all next week. Love you. And as always, if you do not wish to survive, don't listen to me.